Okay, so hear me when I say this. There is a major difference between a person that is getting into it with everybody or the person that likes to get into it with everybody. And what am I mean? What am I saying when I say that? What do I mean? Is that you know how they try to say that if a person is always getting into it with other people, then they must be the problem. Well, I beg to differ because that's not always the case. You could have a quiet person or quiet people that mind their own business, but yet everybody just decides to start picking with them. And like let's look at childhood bullying for example. Are you gonna say that the little quiet kid that's an introvert into themselves and all they do is, just write or read or color and they're just minding their own business. They're not, bothering anybody and they're coming over they have other people coming over there and getting into it with them, or they have other people coming over, thank you. And there are other people coming over to them, messing with them, picking fights with them, bothering them, bullying them. Are you going to say that that quiet kid deserves that? No, they don't, because they weren't bothering anybody. And a lot of times when you have the quiet kid in a setting with other adults or young adults, for example, you have the quiet kid becomes an introverted adult that just stays to themselves. They don't bother nobody. They're doing their own thing, and that bothers insecure people when you're just so independent and you can do your own thing, because the insecure ones feel the need to have an entourage of people around them. They feel like they need to just have so many people to just make them feel good and have fun. Like they just feel the need to just have people around them just so that they can feel good about themselves. It's hard for them to be independent. So they see somebody else being independent, they see that person as a threat. So they start bothering them, they start picking with them. There is a difference between a person that is always bothering somebody versus a person that is always being bothered. Y'all need me to say that again? I got you. There is a major difference between a person that is always bothering somebody and a person that is being bothered. There is a major difference between a person that is always getting into it with people and a person that is getting into it with people. They go hand in hand, because the person that is always getting into it with people is the person that is always bothering other people. But the ones that just seem to be getting into it with others are the ones that are being bothered. You understand the difference? So anyway, it's not always the person that is being bothered. It's not always their fault that they're being bothered. Some people do not know how to defend themselves. Some people do not know how to stick up for themselves. Some people do not know how to help themselves in a social situation when they're being picked on and when they're being bullied. Some people don't know how to respond. And when they don't know how to respond, they'll just sit there and freeze, and they're afraid to walk away. Like they freeze in place. And especially when stuff like this has happened in a school setting, when they're in the classroom, it's not like they were able to just get up and walk out of the classroom. They had to just sit there and take it. That's why a lot of bullying happened in schools, because kids feel like their targets don't have a way to escape. They feel like their victims don't have a way to escape their abuse and their torture. So they torture these kids on purpose to make them feel good about themselves. When you have the type of people that are always being bothered by someone else, those are the kids that got bullied a lot. When you're finding the people that are always bothering somebody else, it's like every time people turn around, there's this one person that's always bothering somebody. If they're not bothering them, they're bothering her. If they're not bothering her, they're bothering him. Why are you always bothering somebody? What are you gaining out of bothering people? What are you gaining out of bothering somebody? That's the real issue that we're trying to figure out here. And the only thing that they're gaining is the type of satisfaction that they bothered somebody and threw their anger onto somebody else. They want to take this burden that they have on their shoulders and dump it on somebody else, and they have to aggressively dump it on somebody else. So don't think that just because someone is constantly getting into it with other people, where other people are getting into it with them, don't always think that the person that is seems to be getting into fights with people or getting in, let me say that differently. Don't think that the person that always seems to be having others argue with them, having others fight with them, having others pick on them, don't think that that person is the problem, because in reality, that person is the victim. That person is the target. There are either victims, villains, or heroes. Which one are you? The victim is the one that gets picked on. The villain is the one that picks on the victim. And the hero is the one that steps forward to stop all that from happening. So which one are you going to be? Don't be a villain, be a hero. And be the hero for other victims. And some of you actually want to be the villain. And if you want to be the villain, then be the villain. But don't sit up there and try to act like you're the victim when you're actually the villain. Because the villain won't act like the hero. The villain will act like the victim. And correct me if I'm wrong. Because the villain wants to sit up here and act like they are the victim, so that what they did to somebody else, now that somebody else has to carry the burden for what they did. Victim gets picked on by the villain. Now the villain is dumping all of that anger and all of that pain and dumping the responsibility onto the victim. And now the victim has to carry the responsibility and the weight and the burden of what the villain just did. That's exactly what they want. That's why villains pick on a victim and then play the victim. That's exactly why villains, that's exactly why, thank you. That's exactly why villains target victims, because they feel like they can get away with it. They feel like they can get away with it. But that's not right. That's not cool. That's not fair. That's not just. And justice will be served. Justice will be served, because those that were victimized in situations will have the justice of others knowing that they were the ones that was not in the wrong, and that they were picked on, and that someone targeted them and bullied them, and people will offer apologies to them for what they've experienced. And on the other end is those villains will be exposed for who they are. That is the justice on their part, where they are exposed for what they really are. And the karma comes where the ones that were victimized, they get the good karma. They get good people that come into their lives that wouldn't ever think of treating them like that, because they love and respect them too much. While the villain, their karma is the fact that they get treated the same way that they treated somebody else. They get a dose of their very own medicine. They get a taste of their own medicine. They essentially drink the poison that they were trying to make others drink. So don't go out here thinking that you could just treat people any old kind of way and it's not going to come back to you. Because it may not come back to you right away, but it will. It's going to come back when you least expect it, and it's going to be 10 times worse. Maybe even 20, 30 times worse, depending on how severely you abused and bullied somebody else. And don't think that those people that bullied you ever got away with it, because they didn't. You may not have seen their karma, but they got their karma. And if they haven't gotten their karma yet, they will get their karma. Because no one is going to get away with treating good-hearted souls wrong like that. Ashe.